Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the ZeldaEngine.net video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. Now, our first question comes from Austin. Who is your favorite Zelda girl? I really don't think I'm qualified to answer this. This is not something that I'm prepared to just, like, pick between. I mean, almost everyone in Skyward Sword. Malon, Marin, Midna. I can't pick between all that. I just defer this to you guys. You guys tell me in the comments. Jamarama asks, do you think the Master's Quest add-on to Ocarina of Time is a good example of the hard difficulty you described in previous mailbags, or do you think it should be something like enemies do more damage to you? Would love to hear what you think. Well, that is one of the things that was in the hero mode in Skyward Sword, and I think that was a pretty good example. I don't know if that, like, the puzzles should change, but usually with a hard mode, you're talking about making it so the challenges are harder and, like, the battles and whatnot are harder. Would I be more thinking of something like the hero mode in Skyward Sword, where you have, they do more damage, you can't find hearts. Although I don't like that, because when you can't find hearts, it feels like you're actually playing a slightly different game in a way. I like it better when it's just harder and you can find and do the same stuff. So I think that an ideal difficulty in another Zelda game would be something where their damage increases, but their health increases, and maybe even their AI is a little smarter and things like that. I think those make good difficulty levels where it still feels like you're playing the exact same game, but it's, well, harder. And I think the more important thing is that even if it's just exactly like hero mode, you really need to be able to choose it at the beginning so that you don't play through the normal difficulty, master the game, and then play through the hard mode, and it's exactly the same because you've already have the game mastered. It's just harder, so you have about the same challenges before. So they need to be available all the time. Atticus asks, Dear Axelette the Jellyfish, yes, asks, what is your opinion on the manga and cartoon series for The Legend of Zelda? Well, the cartoon series is obviously very cheesy, not terribly Zelda-ish, but it's kind of a lot like a lot of the old cartoon series were, and I think it actually fits in quite well in that way. I mean, you don't think, oh, that's not like Zelda, but it fits between Zelda and the Saturday morning cartoon thing to me, and I thought it was funny. It was an amusing. I'm not upset that it exists or anything. The manga is similar. I think that it works for what it is, and I think that they're enjoyable, but they're not exactly very interesting. They're simplifications of the Zelda storylines and the Zelda games, just to appeal to a manga audience or whatever. And I think they're enjoyable. I own the box set, but they're not great manga or great stories on their own. And I think that they could be better, but they're fun. Nerdy Gamer 159 asks, if you had to guess, what do you think the setting or background would be for the next 3DS or Wii U Zelda game? Also, where would you say it would be most likely, or where would you think it would most likely be on the timeline? Well, I don't know about the setting, because that's really dependent on which timeline they go with, and I also don't know which of the three timelines I think they will use, but I do think that the next Zelda game is probably going to take place at the end of one of the timelines. Again, I don't know which one. I don't know where they'll put it, although it probably won't be anywhere too crazy. It's usually Hyrule. I don't think that they're going to deviate from that too often. Maybe for Zelda 3DS, but I'm not necessarily sure they will for Zelda Wii U. But it'll of course be a different version of Hyrule. But I think that it'll be at the end of one of the timelines and probably not relate heavily to stuff established in previous games. Other than the obvious stuff that kind of needs to be in the game, I think we're probably going to have Ganon, but I don't think I think we're gonna have stuff that's not relating to Demise or the Dark Interlopers or any of that kind of stuff. It's gonna be kind of a refreshing storyline on the timeline, the end of the timeline. That's what I think. Atheist Big Red asks, do you think Skull Kids will make an appearance in the next Zelda title? Well, this is one of those things that's hard to answer because, I obviously don't have any inside information on, what specific characters are going to appear. It's really hard when you get down to, specific characters, unless it's, major guys like Ganon. As for the Skull Kids, I think it's possible, but, they're less important than characters like Tingle, who haven't appeared in a while. But then again, because characters like them haven't appeared in a while, because Tingle's been gone for a while, and so has the Skull Kid, except I guess he appeared in Twilight Princess, where Tingle was absent. But, we haven't seen them for a little bit, at least, and I think that does in some ways make it a lot more likely that we will see them in the next game, because like the longer you're without something that kind of appears often, the more likely it's going to appear each time as you go on. So I think it's like possible we'll see them again soon, but I can't give any guarantees or make any real assessments there. Garo Zycon asks, there's been a lot of discussion about a potential Zelda game developed by Retro Studios. Would you want to see a Zelda game produced outside of EAD like this? And if so, which developer would you want to see take the reins? This is not something that I've necessarily put a lot of stock into, especially the Retro thing, because I don't see any reason why Retro themselves would need to make it. People just seem to, like, romanticize the idea of Retro taking other series and, I guess, making them better or whatever. The one thing is I think that there's a lot of capable developers who, if Zelda was going to be developed by someone else, could do it. I don't think, like, people have a tendency to, like, think about what this specific developer could do to it, and I don't think that's necessarily always true. I mean, certainly some developers have strengths, but Nintendo themselves is very, like, wide in scope with the kinds of games they handle, and most developers who would be capable of handling the Zelda series would be similar. So, really, like, you think about, like, there's a lot of other developers like Konami or whatever that could do games of that caliber. And Capcom, I think, in particular, has done Zelda games that I think blend some of the newer ideas with the old, the old classic Zelda overworlds and whatnot that I like the best, like the Minish Cap, which was excellent. But at the same time, they mostly tackle the 2D games. So I would guess I'd say Capcom just because they've kind of proven themselves able to do what I like in a Zelda game. But I don't necessarily think the Zelda series needs to go outside of Nintendo's development studios unless you think that Nintendo isn't capable of improving like the problems that have been in recent Zelda games. And if that's the case, then yeah, I guess I see your point, but I just don't see why they would need to have an outside studio do it. Alright, Gano 3985 asks, I read somewhere that in A Link to the Past, Link's uncle was the King of Hyrule. Is this true? No. Jess Flower asks, are Link and Zelda family? When I first played Ocarina of Time, they mentioned the royal family which Zelda was a part of. So are Link and Zelda related, like brother and sister, and is it only in Ocarina of Time? Well, among the fandom, it's basically a huge no-no to ever suggest the even possibility that they're siblings. And in most of the series, they're not at all. And in general, well, in Ocarina of Time, I actually do think there's some possibility, because I thought it was interesting how, like, there's references to Zelda's father and whatnot, and then references to Zelda knowing Link, although there are other explanations for that. Meanwhile, Link was dropped by his parents, and there's no mention of his father, but his mother dropped him off in the Kokiri Forest. So I thought it was kind of implied, but it's not necessarily that strong. It can't be proven, and I'm one of the few people who thinks it's possible. And Miyamoto has more or less implied, I think, I guess I haven't read the interview myself, but I've heard about it, that he usually considers Link and Zelda romantically attached. So probably not true, but I still think it's interesting, and I think it was implied, at least accidentally. Violet asks, did Skyward Sword disappoint you? Why or why not? Yeah, the game definitely disappointed me. I think any game where you hype it up that much would disappoint you. It did still end up being my favorite Zelda game, but for not all the reasons I expected. I kind of wanted Skyward Sword to be a real return to like the classic styles in 3D, and to have two overworlds in which the sky is treated like fast transportation, but also had a lot of relaxing stuff to do in there, kind of like the Great Sea and the Wind Waker, just quicker. And it wasn't that at all. It was just almost nothing. Though it was fairly fast, whereas the ground surface would be connected and it'd be like, I don't know, Link to the Past in 3D. But it didn't succeed at that either, though I think it got closer than a lot of recent games did, because there was like a dense overworld with a lot of stuff to do down there, and it wasn't always linear, although there was still a lot of a hallway problem that you see in a lot of modern 3D Zelda games. So that would be the main thing for me. I just think the world construction was terrible. There are other disappointments in the game, but overall I enjoyed it a lot. It's just the overworld really needed a lot of work. A Link in Time asks, would you like to see a darker Zelda game in Skyward Sword's art style? Yeah, sure. I don't necessarily think we need to see Skyward Sword's specific art style again terribly soon, but it's very similar to Ocarina of Time in a lot of ways, because it's like an anime style, but with some realistic proportions and some stylization and whatnot. And I like that style. I like it a lot. I like to see something like that again, whether it's Skyward Sword specific, like impressionist version of it or not. And I think that it fits just as well for dark stuff as not, and I think it would be interesting to see that, because that's kind of like the relationship between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. So, yeah, sure, why not? Deku Knight asks, how likely is it that Ghirahim will make a future appearance in the Zelda series? I've continuously heard that he was destroyed when he shattered after Link defeated Demise. However, considering his position as the central protagonist, it's antagonist. It seems unlikely that his demise, pun intended, would have been so anticlimactic. Do you think he's dead or just dormant, perhaps like Fi? Um, you know, he was... I don't think that you can necessarily say he was definitely destroyed. It's abstract how he disappeared. You can definitely think he was, but I don't think you can say for certain. Me, myself, the fact that he was the king, like the Demon King's weapon, and he turned into a, he was like a black weapon with a red jewel, I think is kind of interesting when you compare it to Ganon's trident in Four Swords Adventures, which is supposed to go along with his title of Demon King or King of Darkness or whatever. Like, it's what gives him the title. And it's a black trident with a red jewel, I don't think we're going to see Ghirahim again anytime soon, but I think that that is an interesting connection, and I think that we are going to see something like that again. I think that's something that is an inevitability on the timeline just because of the nature of Ghirahim's character. Whether they do it soon or how they'll do it, if at all, I don't really know. But I think it's possible. Alright, last question. Ventus asks, at the end of Skyward Sword, did Impa die? I know it is pretty much implied she did, but what are your thoughts? Well, she's an old woman, and she disappears, and there's this moment of sadness. It's implied pretty strongly that she died. I guess if you wanted to, you could apply something else there and say that there's more to it. But really, that's what they were trying to say. They just did it without making it like all there being a corpse there, because it's Nintendo. So, yeah. She's dead as far as I can tell. Alright guys, that's it for this time. Be sure to send your questions to the contact page and whatnot in the description, and I'll see you guys later. Ganon's Ghost asks, is it true that the Ocarina of Time was made by time shift stones? If so, when they would try to carve it, wouldn't they hit it, causing time to go forward a lot, making another guy go hit it, causing the first guy to come back to the past, making the second guy die? Yes. Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast of ZeldaEngine.net, and this is the... Wait. Well, it is sort of one of the things that happens in Master Quest, but this is beside the point. Or